catalyst for urban regeneration in many countries. It serves as the heart of a community where people can gather and interact. They are also able to create a sense of place, shape the identity of a city, neighborhood, and ultimately improve urban environments. We're delighted to have Chris Law, founding director of Oval Partnership, a leading expert whose firm has done many notable projects in this area, to share more with us. Chris, please take us away.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Chris Law. I'm an architect in private practice in Asia. I am one of the founders of the Oval Partnership. In my last 20 years of practice in Asia, a large part of my practice has been in the conceiving, the designing, and the delivering, and afterwards the operation of public space in Asia. And today I want to share with you a story of public space in an old part of Hong Kong called Wan Chai. That in fact our own office is situated in Wan Chai, and we have been working in Wan Chai for many years. And through the story, I want to share my observation that public space is very, very important for Asian cities. In fact, I also argue that in the future, public space will be the touchstone, probably the most effective way to build community in Asian cities. Now, Asian cities are very, in a way, very different from cities in Europe, in the sense that many of these cities are relatively young. They probably started 100 or 200 years ago, and they started as small towns and then became low-rise, low to mid-rise trading ports or mixed-use community. Then, in the last 20, 30 years, suddenly they went through really rapid development. These low-rise, mixed-income neighborhood, within a few years, suddenly become 40, 50, or even kind of taller. And all of a sudden, a lot of new people come into these old parts of cities. And that actually makes public space very often the bone of contention, because that's actually where everyone is kind of scrambling for space. Now, Wan Chai illustrates, the story of Wan Chai illustrates this process. And I want to share with all of us 3 examples in Wan Chai. Wan Chai is the middle part of Hong Kong Island, halfway between Causeway Bay and the Central Business District. It has always been a mixed-use area. In fact, during it was developed, very much developed after the First World War, in these kind of 2, 3-story high shop houses, tenement buildings. During the Second World War, it was called a Little Tokyo. It was actually a very vibrant area with restaurants and shops and people living there. And then after the Second World War, of course, people knew of Wan Chai through stories and films like The World of Susie Wong. Yeah, that's where many of the American GIs after the war and also during the Vietnam War would dwell. But by the 1990s, a large part of Wan Chai became very old, and also there was a claim that many parts of these old Wan Chai district was positively hazardous because they are kind of a fire hazard. They are also a structural danger, and there was actually major concerted government effort to try and redevelop or regenerate Wan Chai. And in the late 1990s, an organization that I helped found called Designing Hong Kong undertook a lot of research on really what is happening in the district. And we did a lot of street interviews. We did focus group, talking to the young people and elderly people in the district. And we had workshops with professionals, and we tried to find out really what is happening to this old district. And we found that, very interestingly, there is a very strong sense of community in Wan Chai. And one of the key issues was really there is a complete shortage of space. Virtually 73% of people we interviewed said that they were dissatisfied with the availability of greenery and space within Wan Chai. So we got together with the local welfare arm of the Anglican Church called St. James's Settlement. We found a piece of land in Wan Chai. It was at the time a wasted piece of land. And then we talked to the government. We said to the government that, well, would you allow the local resident to make use of this piece of land? Because they all live in very small partition rooms. They don't even live in an apartment. They have 100 square feet. And they don't have living room at all. And there were a lot of elderly people with young people, with small kids. The adults all had to go out to work, but then the elderly people and the kids actually had nowhere to go. So the government agreed to give us a couple of pieces of land that we worked with the local residents to design it together. In fact, architects, designers acted as a facilitator. The actual design was done by the local residents. There was the incorporated owners of the 19 blocks of flats in the vicinity. They got together to design this open space as a community living room. It was because they found that at home they actually didn't have a living room. So they worked together, and then we started work on this public open space. And we work with local community to design it. They want this space to be for two types of uses, for toddlers, but also for elderly people who can gather here and look after the young kids, but also they can play chess in these open spaces. You can see from this slide that the floor pattern is actually the street pattern of the old part of Wan Chai. And it was all designed by the community. And the community also formed Friends of Wan Chai Park. They help to plant the trees. They also hold activities in the public open space. This is an example of Chinese New Year. They would hold an event at Chinese New Year. Very close to the first piece of open space, about 200 meters, is an area slightly up the hill called the Star Street area. It is an older part of the city, slightly older than the flat part. In fact, the Roman Catholic from Macau came over here 150 years ago and had the first enclave in this Star Street area. The local landowner, Swire Properties, with the incorporated owners of Dominion Gardens. There were several hundreds of these owners of small offices. They got together and then they talked to the government and said, well, why don't we improve the public space in the whole Star Street area together? And the government said yes in the end, working with the local district board, many people from the local community, and also some of the academics. They formed a public-private community tripartite partnership to improve the streets and the square of the Star Street area. Again, there was a very interesting consultation, pop-up store, and activities to find out what do people really take or what are the important things for the people who live and work in the area. Through through all this research, we found that people treasure the sense of history of the Star Street area. They don't want the place to become something very high tech, something very ultra modern. They actually want the whole place to remind them of the history and the heritage of the area. So this is the result of their participation. Afterwards, we also held a whole series of events, all contributed by the local community, arts and cultural event in these public open spaces. And all these activities and events are completely bottom up. They're not organized from top down. What happened was we told people that there are the Star Street area is open for activities. Why don't you come in and perform? So these the people on this photograph are all volunteers. They want to come in and perform. The fashion shows are all done by kind of volunteers. Now, another 300 meters from the Star Street area is another old part of Wan Chai called the Blue House. These old buildings were built at the turn of the century, around 1910, about 100 years old. They were very, very classic of the shop houses. This shows what it looks like in 1960s and the old condition. Again, the local community got together, St. James's Settlement Heritage Group, the residents group, they all got together and convinced the government to let them continue to live there, not only to live there, but also renovate the building. The government chipped in some money to renovate the building. Many welfare organizations, such as the Hong Kong Jockey Club, and some private enterprise, such as HSBC, donated money, not only to renovate the building, but to get the local residents to work together to hold exhibitions, community classrooms, local tours, heritage tours, and also a concerned group to improve the community. So the public space behind these shop houses become a major icon and focal point that the community can get together. This is an example when they got together and hold a wonderful Chinese New Year meal and performances. This is a photograph of all the people who got involved in this public space. And in fact, just a couple of months ago, this project was given the top award by UNESCO, the Award of Excellence. Out of the 60, 70 awards, this is the very top of the awards, showing the recognition of UNESCO to the effort of the community. So my experience is there are three aspects of public space. The most basic one is it is an amenity. It provides much needed public amenity for people, especially in Southeast Asia, who live in very crowded, high density environment. Amenity, definitely. But at a higher level, spaces for interaction, street theater. A lot of people talk about people watching. Yes, definitely. Public spaces are very, very powerful places for for street theater, people watching, interaction. But there is also fundamentally a most important aspect of public space that actually, to me, is actually the raison d'etre of public space in Asia. It is actually a place for collaboration, discussion, sometimes quite heated discussion and debate, and contribution by everyone to make the Asian city a better place for everyone to live in. I wholeheartedly recommend you to look at all three aspects of public spaces, because it is when we can make all three aspects highly visible and important in the conception and the building and the operation of public space, that we can really make use of public space to the fullest potential. And I would further argue that in these fast-changing Asian, high-density, rapidly developing Asian city, making full use of public space is really the touchstone of building a better city that would take into account the interest of everyone in the city, whether they are the less fortunate part of the community or the more affluent part, whether they are younger or whether they are older, whether they are small businesses or large corporations. It is through working together through public spaces that we can build, collaborate, and build a better city for tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris. That was a wonderful presentation, and I loved all the imagery. If you have any questions regarding the presentation, please do email ULI Asia Pacific. We can connect with Chris separately and, connect you thereafter. We hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you again for joining. This presentation was recorded, and it will be made available through our website and other social media platforms. So please look out for it and share it with your community. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Chris.